We're going to get chairs that fit together better, and every week we don't. Look, here we
Hi,
are.
good morning.
Good morning, and welcome to your Friday.
Yep, here it is, 9 o'clock on a Friday. This is called This Is Now a Bridge to a Better World. I'm Teresa Mitchell.
And I'm Ani, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about this morning.
Morning,
Good
John.
morning to everyone. We are glad to see you, and yeah, welcome to Friday. Welcome to springtime in the Pacific Northwest. As for me, the sun blooming of all things last weekend really did a number on me. You can still hear it in my voice. As much as I love the springtime sometimes does not love me back. I think I might have said that on last week's show.
Oh, it's
It's
visibly
true.
greener out the window today.
It is visibly greener. It's luscious. Bring on the rain, bring on the blooms, and I've got all the extra meds that I can get through this beautiful season. We have things to talk about this morning, as often. They're, how do we say, hard information. Uh, Really, what we're talking about today is the terrifying power of the uber rich and how they are using it now, what they plan to do with it, and the fact that, of course, the only thing that can fight against the terrifying power of the uber rich is us coming together, uniting, being strong, and union strong at that. So we'll have information throughout the show uh, about banding together, about getting workers united. But right now, what I want to do is really look at some of the issues going on with the super rich. It's not going to shock any of our viewers to hear that there's an intense concentration of wealth and that it is feeding the rise of hard right authoritarian rule around the world. Since 2020, just 4 years ago, 5 billionaires have doubled their wealth, while the poorest 5 billion people in the world have become increasingly more impoverished. Since 2020, almost two-thirds of all of the new wealth that's been generated has been sucked straight up to the top 1%. The richest 1% in all G20 countries collectively brought in more than an $18 trillion income in 2020. Right? So that, just to say again, the top 1% in the G20 countries had a combined income of more than $18 trillion in 1 year. Extreme wealth and poverty are rising simultaneously for the first time in decades. It's driven by corporate greed and it's made manifest through regressive tax structures and the deregulation of industry at the peril of the planet and all who dwell here. As people struggle with the ever higher cost of living and inflation, uh, inflation is making headlines all the time, but there's very seldom talk about what's going on, what's driving it. We hear the Biden administration getting blamed. We hear, gee, people don't trust the government because, in fact, we cannot afford rent and food, and what are they good for? Well, what's not making those headlines are the obscene profits that the top corporations have made. So I just want to sort of look at that again. The prices have skyrocketed, and it's not about a legitimate higher cost of manufacture. It's in fact about unchecked corporate greed. 95 food and energy corporations doubled their company profits in 2022, paying out nearly $260 billion to their shareholders. Oxfam released an analysis last month that estimates that the richest 1% in G20 countries have seen their top income tax rates plummet by around a third in recent decades. How does it keep happening? How does it keep happening that the richest people in the world keep getting their tax rates cut? Any guesses?
I think they might have done something to help that along.
Oh, like their concentrated wealth gives them concentrated power? And then they have undue influence over the mechanizations of government and legislation and regulations and tax law.
I think so. I mean, I think generally they've achieved what they wanted in the Reagan counter revolution, and that is people don't talk about who gets what money, and that's worked pretty well. I mean, it's like it's almost immoral, and they've convinced, for example, workers that it's immoral to ask each other how much they're making, even if they're doing the same job.
I did that. I did that once at a job in the mid 90s. I worked at a little book warehouse, a little book. It was a company that supplied libraries with ongoing subscriptions for annual proceedings and that sort of thing. Sort of an outsourced and underpaid acquisition librarian staff, if you will. And interestingly, right before I left, and that's not a untied event, let's just say, I started asking people how much they made, and I was not real surprised to find out that men actually did make more than women in the same positions. We were there for about the same amount of time, and also that, in fact, the native-born American workers made more than the immigrant workers in the same departments doing the same jobs. And I started talking about that, and then I started finding other work. So it's actually revolutionary to discuss wages with your coworkers. And I'm just going to put it out there for that. Um, so Oxfam's analysis was published as the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors convened in Brazil in February for their first meeting of this year. Oxfam noted that in Brazil, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Italy, the mega rich pay lower effective tax rates than the average workers in those countries. That's after years of regressive tax cuts, deliberately empowering the rich. Oxfam estimates that 5% wealth, that a 5% wealth tax targeting multimillionaires and billionaires in G20 countries could raise about $1.5 trillion a year in revenue. And that, in fact, would be enough to, as the group says, help end global hunger, help low and middle income countries adapt to climate change, and to bring the world back on track to meeting all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and still leave more than $546 billion to invest in inequality busting public services and climate action in the G20 countries. That's just a 5% wealth tax on the wealthiest people can bring in that much public good. Kasia Maia is the executive director of Oxfam in Brazil, and she says that the global war on fair taxation has coincided with a war on democracy, putting more and more money and power into the hands of the tiny, inequality fueling ruling elite. So it's a system that is not only perpetuating itself, it's a system that is in fact exponentially accelerating itself because the more concentrated wealth and power they have, the more they're using those concentrations of wealth and power to further empower themselves. And in that zero sum game, that is the game that the ultra wealthy play, their their empowerment, their concentrated wealth comes directly from the blood of the earth and those who dwell on it. The most impoverished 5 billion people on the planet are suffering the most, but we all suffer at the hands of the ultra rich. Kasia Meyer says, as the finance ministers of the world's largest economies gather this week, this contest takes the center stage. Will they reclaim their democracies, the G20 countries, Will they reclaim their own democracies by taxing the super rich? Well, fast forward to this week, and there's a group called Patriotic Millionaires. Uh, they have addressed their concerns to uh, a special UN panel of Economic and Social Council that has met this week. They've made a direct case to tax the super rich, citing very recent survey results showing that nearly 3/4 of millionaires in G20 countries support higher taxes on extreme wealth to improve key public services and address long-standing cost of living crises. The president of Patriotic Millionaires, Erica Payne, emphasizes that the millionaires who have joined together in this call for higher taxes on the wealthy are not doing so because of the goodness of their hearts, she said. She says they're not doing so out of altruism, but because even they can see that the obscene concentrations of wealth has caused a major shift in power around the world, saying that the shift in taxation would be in everyone's self interest, including the ultra wealthy. She points out that if we don't address the twin crises of wealth concentration and inequality, and I quote, we will face in the next decade the wholesale dismantling and eventual death of liberal democracy, of justice, and of basic human needs. This isn't Bernie Sanders talking, right? This isn't AOC. This isn't the Biden Marxists.
This is the stuff you're not supposed to say, though. This is what you're not supposed to know.
These are the millionaires that actually have a little bit of foresight to see that if the game keeps going like it is, everybody loses, including the wealthy. Because where do you live when the planet's on fire? Well, the super rich can buy themselves out of immediate crisis, but the crisis is still going to be there. We'll get a little bit more to that in a moment. The billionaires have exponentially increased their wealth by using their influence and raw economic power to impose their will on policies and deregulations in blatantly undemocratic maneuvers. We've seen it, we've been watching it. Teresa and I have been talking about it with y'all, and of course, we are not alone. This amassing of power works against a healthy society by both giving the ultra wealthy a stranglehold on the political processes, as well as, those political processes, deregulation, a gutting of environmental laws, gutting of labor laws, all the things we were fighting against in the WTO fights against global capital. But it also, excuse me, it also hurts the rest of us, hurts the rest of a healthy working society by taking that money directly out of public coffers, by removing it from the tax bases that could be used to fund housing, education, healthcare, and other critical infrastructural needs. The damage done by the extreme wealth is writ large all over climate catastrophe. That's another place we can see the harm they're doing. Excuse me.
Makes me want to drink.
Cheers.
Nail 'em.
Right. So, the evolving climate catastrophe and its existential threat to us as it evolves around us is being fueled by the richest 1%. In 2019, the super rich, that 1%, was responsible for more carbon emissions than the 66% of humanity, or 5 billion people. Right? 1% had more carbon emissions than the lowest 66%. Larry Ellison is one of the richest men in America. Through his lifestyle, which includes frequent travel in a private jet, he has a consumption carbon footprint that is 539 times greater than the carbon footprint of the average American. And remember, the average American has a carbon footprint that is one of the largest in the world on average.
Also, you can't do a hell of a lot about it. You can do some about it, but
I'm just in it's a comparison thing. I'm
Yeah,
not I'm
yeah,
not
exactly.
getting down on working Americans because we've got a big carbon footprint
Mhm.
because we get it. That's the way the game's been rigged and we need to
Yep.
change that game. But what I am saying is even our overbloated carbon footprint of average Americanism
is tiny
pales.
compared to the super rich. Yes.
Yeah, pales, especially, I'm just in this one instance, Larry Ellison, right? 539 times more than the average bear in this country. So, beyond their personal consumption, an even larger part of the problem is their investments in polluting industries. According to Oxfam, in a report they released last fall, the emissions of the richest 1% will cause over 1 million heat related deaths this decade. About 1.3, they're estimating between 2020 and 2030. We're in the midst of that. That's an astonishing number of people. And just to give you an idea, that's roughly the equivalent of the entire population of Dallas, Texas. What if you woke up one day and everyone in Dallas was dead? That's a hell of a lot of people. And those are the lives, that number of lives are currently in jeopardy, are being killed by the climate catastrophe, heat related phenomenon that are becoming much greater, much more frequent. I'm talking about the heat domes, I'm talking about wildfires, I'm talking about floods, I'm talking about droughts and famine. Now, when these heat domes and wildfires happen, which again, like I said, they're doing with far more regularity, the super rich don't really have to stick around anywhere that they might be affected. They can get on those carbon, carbon spewing private jets and just head to better weather. Go off and go to their uh, private enclaves with fiery moats and other things that we've been reading about, that they have built in preparation for
Yes.
the apocalypse that they are currently bringing on.
They're so afraid. I mean, deep down there, there's some guilt.
I don't think it's deep. I think they are acting this way because they know that they are the supervillains, right? So again, according to Oxfam, the wealthy are reluctant to move towards changing any system to fight climate catastrophe unless it impacts them directly, and they use their wealth to keep those impacts at a minimum. More than 91% of deaths caused by climate related disasters in the last 50 years occur in low income countries. In 2022, West Africa experienced massive flooding that displaced over 1.5 million people and damaged over 300,000 homes. Were the super rich affected or impacted in any way? No, they were not.
No, hop in your jet, burn 3,000 pounds of fuel, and go to Montana.
Rich countries agreed to support lower income countries with funding for the climate action in 2015 Paris Accord agreements. Excuse me. Getting choked up. But most of that funding has been provided as loans, which keeps those countries on the hooks with unsupportable debt. And so far, the lowest income countries actually need 27 times more funding than they've been receiving. This lack of adequate support contributes to a situation where human mortality from floods, from droughts, and storms were 15 times higher in low income regions compared to the wealthier parts of the world. Across Africa, agricultural productivity has declined by 34% since 1961. In large part, that's due to climate change. Climate change brought about by drought, deforestation, which has caused drought, switching to export crops to feed the unsupportable debt also has played a part of that. Meanwhile, from 2020 to 2021, billionaires in the food and agricultural industries were able to raise their collective wealth by 45%. That's not going to farm workers. That's not going to the farmers in India who are immolating themselves in protest of their dire situations in which they find themselves. That 45% gain in collective wealth goes directly to the billionaire and owning class. Renewable energy can counteract some of the consumption of the ultra rich, but remember that it takes a lot to keep up on it. The carbon emissions from billionaires cancel out the benefits of 1 million wind turbines every year. Their private jets, their private yachts, their lifestyles of excess. Let's just excess beyond my imaginings. Enclaves with fiery moats. Okay. It offsets, it eats enough energy to offset the benefits that we would get from 1 million wind turbines every year. And to put that in perspective, it took over 40 years for the US to make about 80,000 turbines. The only solution for wasteful consumption, such as private jets, is to end it, to tax it, to restrict it, and to say, no, because you have rigged the game to acquire and consume ever more of the Earth's resources and political power, you don't actually have the right to kill us all. And, again, to end it, and we can end it again, I'm going to say, with the power of the people.
Well, yeah, and there's more power to that than you might know. Well, you have more to go on that.
Well, yeah, okay. I'm just giving you a little chance if you wanted to.
Okay,
chime
well,
in.
one of my favorite things to bring up at this point is that just one-on-one, and by spreading an absolutely true idea, you can have quite an impact. And I know this because I've noticed it in my life. And one of those ideas is simply based on the obscurity of capitalism. Capitalism intentionally confuses people as to what it is and how it works. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. If you've read Moby Dick, or if you're aware of the lives of the pirates, then you know that what they did when they were distributing wealth was they were open about it. This is not true in capitalism. When Ishmael goes on the whaling ship, he's given a percentage of how much they anticipate. He's given a percentage of whatever they bring in, which for whaling ships could sometimes be fabulous sums. So he knows what he's in for and how the money works. He can, work it out on pencil and paper. And because you could back there in the 19th century, people had those skills. And today, you go to a job and you get a wage, and you think that the wage is your worth. But the wage is simply based on desperation of everyone else. And it is intentionally set to be as absolutely minimal as it can be according to that desperation. That desperation is also conditioned by the fact that people think their worth is their wage. Here's your money. You're now worth $40,000 a year. That's not true. You're producing $400,000, $100,000 a year with your labor that is taken away from you. This is what creates the billionaires. And if I can throw in an actual quote from Common Dreams article, and this is by, what was his name?
Jake Johnson.
Thank you, Jeff Johnson. The EPI Institute has estimated between 1979 and 2017, the median U.S. worker lost out on $3,250 in pay per year due to the decline in unionization during that period. And I thought, can that possibly be true? And so what I did is I went back and I compared my dad's CPA salary. He was at the top of his game, but he was just CPA. He was making $35K in 75. So use the inflation calculator. That's $200,000 right now. How much less are CPAs making? About $125,000. And where'd that money go? It was sucked up into billionaires. And that's how much billions and trillions are, that they've taken a good life from most Americans. That's the truth, and that's the provable truth. They've taken a good life from most Americans, and they've created the billionaire class. And these are the parasites that we deal with today. This is Bezos and Musk.
And it's beyond Bezos and Musk. I want to pivot and actually look closely at another reprehensible uh, piece of nasty wealth, and that's Jared Kushner.
Uh,
Kushner, we remember him, Trump's son-in-law, the nepotistic, the nepotistic relationship with his daddy-in-law, bringing him into that administration. And what was his qualification? He was very, very wealthy. He came from an extremely wealthy family, and he married Trump's daughter. All right. So, what does he get to do during that administration? He gets to go to the Middle East. He's put in a special sort of position to broker deals in the Middle East. Proving himself to be smugly irredeemable, he has smoothly suggested in a recently released interview that Netanyahu clear out the rest of Gaza to develop beautiful beachfront property, openly calling for the removal of Palestinians. More than 100 and I'm sorry, more than 1.5 million people. He is calling for the removal of 1.5 million people, including hundreds of thousands of children, with words that actually fell from his mouth. He said, and I quote, "It's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there. But from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up." He suggests that the right diplomacy in Egypt could be pressured. That with the right diplomacy in Egypt, Egypt could be pressured into taking the displaced Palestinians, something that they say that they are not willing to do at this point. But again, Kushner suggests the right diplomacy could make it happen. He's followed that up by saying that in addition to removing Palestinians from their homeland, and again, I'm just going to quote this reprehensible POS. He says, and I quote, "Try to just bulldoze something in Negev. I would try to move people in there." He says, "I know that won't be a popular thing to do, but I think that that's a better option to do so. You can go in and finish the job." Trump used the line "finish the job" when referring to the ceaseless Israeli assaults on Gaza just a few days before Kushner gave that interview around March 8th.
just bulldoze those pesky Philistine bones out of the way.
This is beyond callous. It is beyond obscene. It is encouraging war crime. It is flat out suggesting war crime. And he's doing so from a position of great privilege through inherited and nepotistically gained extreme wealth.
Yeah, John, prime beachfront
All
property. That's what
yeah,
it's all about.
for
in his
prime
brain.
beachfront property. He is a real estate mogul. And this is what he sees. He doesn't see the lives of children, the lives of families, the lives of people, born onto this earth and having their own ideas, thoughts, inspirations, work to do. He doesn't see the earth as a whole that supports us, that is, in fact, a place that gives us all a home. No, he sees it as something that is bought and traded to gain more political power for the super wealthy. They're the legitimate owners of this world, and the rest of us can just go fuck ourselves. Please die quietly in the corner. We just need a little workforce.
I have some good news actually, though. I mean, people are waking up in the United States in terms of labor power. There's a steady 6 or 7% gain for everyone who gets a union contract and moves forward with it. That's pretty small, but as I was saying before, that's compared to losing that much and more every single year. I mean, that's what happens when your wages stay the same and inflation keeps moving. Well, the people who own the operation, they're going to benefit from those higher prices from whatever it is that they're selling. You don't, and they benefit from the fact that you're doing your labor for less, year after year after year, until we are where we are with our own grandparents living on the sidewalks in little tents. So I'm glad that people are picking it up, that they're seeing it. And also, I want to say about Biden. The thing about Biden is you have to put the oxygen mask over your own face first. And in this case, doing that action, if I can extend the metaphor, is it's offensive because you really want to help all the people. You want to help the Palestinians. And, when you've got both candidates, both major candidates in the election, just absolutely opposed to the existence of Palestinians, then you have to take your struggle elsewhere. And so I'm not morally saying that there is a reason to support Biden, but there is a survival reason to support Biden, because he is, as I've mentioned before, the only one to actually take the attitude of standing with labor. He is actually standing with labor. He has mentioned that I think I have an article about he pledged 1.7 billion to fund initiatives aimed at ending hunger across the United States. Now, when he's talking about billions, and he talked specifically about getting the billions by taxing the billionaires, they are mad about it, and they're determined to make sure it doesn't happen. They're furious, and as we've been saying, they have their program. And I've noticed that the funding for let's call them left dark money is about 1/20th that of funding for right dark money. Both play the dark money game, and there isn't any true left dark money. There's liberal, which is to the left of Attila the Hun, which isn't saying much, but it's out there. There's a little bit, and it doesn't actually take much when you have the truth. The truth, I mean, it's like a computer worm. When it's strong enough, it just keeps working its way up the program. And when people realize that wages are not their value, that wages really are theft. It's not an exaggeration. A wage is a theft. When you see that, you can't unsee it. So I encourage you to spread that using your own words in whatever way you can. It is powerful. And this is why it's dangerous to let a commie like me loose in society.
We need to always reinforce each other, because we're speaking truth to power, and it's a hard position to be in. And so always please support each other, speak your truth, speak it loudly, speak it in places that you may be one or just among a couple of voices with your opinions. Hold strong. And, because these truths, they do resonate. People know what time it is. But as Teresa says, we're not supposed to say it out loud, right? So please do speak your truth, speak it loudly, organize in your workplaces, and organize mutual aid networks in your communities, in our communities. Make sure that we have each other's backs, because economically things are really weird and scary. Climate change wise, things are really even possibly weirder and scarier. And then we also, have the rise of fascism, which is deeply connected. All of these things are braided together in what I'm going to say is one of the worst dystopian LARPs I've had a chance to play in. So I also want to point out hope on another front, and that is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders have joined forces in the last day to reintroduce the Green New Deal for Public Housing Act. And that is looking to invest $234 billion over 10 years to transition the entire public housing stock in the US to zero carbon, highly energy efficient homes, dramatically improving living conditions for nearly 2 million people across this country who live in public housing. This is the kind of forward thinking and legislation we absolutely need to support.
I quite agree.
All right. Well, that's good.
Surprise.
You are watching This Is Now Bridge to a Better World. I'm Ani.
I'm Teresa.
And, we're here every Friday morning, just about this time. And we call that 9 o'clock. And we are here to, rabble rouse and to encourage each other to take heart and to move forward in a good way. I want to shift. Is it time to do
Let's shift.
the transition thing? Um,
Third gear. That's all right.
so there's a couple of things. I guess in that reintroduction of the show, I should say, please do subscribe. If you have not already subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel now. Hit the like button on this video, please, and hit the notification bell so that you can, in fact, be notified of any time we post something, which we swear we might do more often. So all of that said, you can also find links to follow us in the Twitterverse or on Instagram. Honestly, I don't think I've posted to Instagram in a year for this particular thing, but hey, it could happen, and I think it should. I'll get on our expert social media team, which I think includes 2 aging cats and a turtle, to see if they can help us out and support us.
Well, I believe you have some insights to share.
Yeah, there's
Some insights.
before I get into what the cards say this week, and they're good ones, I want to say that, people power, the power of the union, the power of our communities, the power of our chosen families to really look out for it and take care of each other, to have each other's backs, to move forward together, to provide a strong, united population that says caring and compassion is our strength. I want to put forth the idea that service is one of our obligations from being born into this world. And what do I mean by service? I mean to serve the earth and the dwellers hereon, to really work to support each other, to work to be kind, to try to mitigate harm, to stop hate, to speak out against injustice, and to really work towards that better world that we talk about bridging to. That is a world that we can create, but we cannot create that which we cannot imagine. So I really want to encourage us to come together and share our visions and share our ideals and share our dreams. Because I don't really think that we can just cut and paste out of different books of political theory and cobble together something wholly new and different that this world needs. We have to create it together. I think Billy Bragg has a line from a song that says, "A poet with all the answers has never yet been built." And that's true. But together we can start sussing it out. Many people have already started, right? Many people never really lost the way, but had it sort of, how do we say, stolen through acts of colonization and genocide. We have to find ways to live with each other on this planet and share our resources. We have to share our toys. We have to have each other's backs. And we have to focus on love and compassion. That's the way through. That's the way to build solidarity. Speak out against injustice wherever you see it. Work towards kindness and a better future for us all. And with that, those were the words I had in my head when I woke up this morning. Now for the tarot. What do we have here? We have the 3 of Wands, and it's inversed. We have the Lovers, and we have the Page of Wands. And what does this all mean? It is, in fact, a call to focus on love, to focus on beauty. Where is that camera? To focus on love, to focus on beauty, to remember that having each other's backs and taking long naps in the sun and remembering that the earth is a beautiful place to be is real, right? It's something that we need in our lives. We need love. We need beauty. We need each other. We need warmth.
Oh, they're cuddly kitties.
we also have the Page of Wands. And the Page of Wands invites us to step out and play. It's really kind of the card of springtime. It's the card of being playful, childlike, reaching out with your curiosity to explore, to have fun, to feed your heart, to feed your soul. And the Three of Wands inversed is kind of a call to, to see about this cat over here that's turned away. There may be something that you are working on right now that has caused you to pull back from the collective. Maybe you drank from the bitter cup and were involved in a group that, um, you kind of got burnt out. You kind of got burnt. Maybe you had a couple of members in your chosen family or your family of origin that were not loving, not kind, that may have been hurtful. And maybe it's caused you to kind of close off. Closing off, I get it. It's self-protection. Sometimes we need to kind of go deep within ourselves and do the healing work. But then you really got to reconnect. This is where we are fed. This is what feeds our souls and our hearts. So if you find that you've been hurt and that you've been pulling back because of it, if you find that you are more reticent to play than you have been in the past, this is time to connect, to remember to love each other, to reach out to a friend, to reach out to each other. I'm so glad we have this community on Friday mornings. It does my heart a world of good to know that you're there and that you're listening and that you care. So remember to be good family to each other and remember to come out and play. Please feel free to contact us. Leave your comments below about your thoughts on this show, about what you're doing to become more active and more present in this fight for justice, in this dance for justice. As my old friend Melody would say, she would want to try to avoid words of contention and war. And she always talked about the dance instead of the struggle. And I think I love that shift in consciousness. So let us try to dance in a better world. Let us hold each other close and envision what that world will look like so that we can, in fact, build it here and now.
Well said.
And with that,
shall we bid adieu?
I think this is that time. Please do contact us. You can message us through those social media networks that we got links to here. We also, again, leave your comments below and we will read them. Thank you for joining us this morning. We love you.
Yeah, I like the floaty heart thing. Well, good night, Chet. Good night, David, and all the ships at sea.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night at 10 in the morning.